and welcome to another Biddle, the first of the year for 2020. Can you believe this? Saturday, January 4th, 2020. How's everybody doing?
Good
Hello.
evening and
Doing great.
happy New Year to everybody.
All right. If we can get a quick confirmation from chat saying the sound is good, we will continue on. But we are officially open for business in 2020.
It's working.
Good.
All right.
Sounds good to me, yeah.
Yep, I can hear it.
All right. So we decided to go back to our regular routine and do not mute our phones. That's what we decided to do. We decided to go back to our regular routine and do a 2-week distro challenge. And that was Fedora 31. And that's what we are going to be talking about today for the first little bit. And then we're going to continue testing for another week. And we'll come back with our final thoughts. If any of you want to skip for this week until next week, you're more than welcome. But we'll try to get through for everybody. Zeb, let's start with you, brother.
Well, I'm going to keep it fairly short this week because I want to give Fedora another try. I've been using Fedora when it comes out since 26. So for me, 26, 27, 28, 29 were good. And I could use them and I could set them up and it was just another distribution that worked. 30 started to go a little bit flaky. And then 31, well, I don't know if it's, I just don't know what's gone wrong. I mean, I tried the KDE version and that had visual glitches, stuff was hesitant, things weren't working properly. So I thought, no, start again because this is not Fedora. Went Fedora XFCE and had a better go at it, but it just doesn't feel as fluid as the old Fedora. So I know it's silly, but every now and again you can install a distro and for whatever reason, something goes wrong during the install. And that's just Linux. So I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to reinstall basic XFCE and I'll give a full report last week. But at the moment it's a bit, it didn't shine like it has done in the past.
Well, we're going to dive deep into, Fedora later as far as like who it's designed for and everything. But I haven't tried Fedora in, I don't know. I don't know if I participated in the last time we tried Fedora, if I'm not mistaken, but I haven't tried it in a while. And I had no problems and no issues with the install. And I haven't got a lot of time to test it this week, but well, I'll let everybody else go, and then I'll mingle mine in.
Know, we were chatting earlier, and you're an all AMD on your test machine now, aren't you?
Well, that's part of the bliss of the test machine is that I have Nvidia for the main machine, which is also the gaming machine, and for the test machine, I got an AMD card in that, and yeah, I don't have to worry about Nvidia drivers or Wayland or anything else. So
yeah. So it'd be interesting to see if any other NVIDIA users had a few issues.
Yep. Chris has deferred to next week, I believe, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go straight to Aris. Aris, did you get to try Fedora 31?
Yes, I did. I tried I installed GNOME and Plasma. I got to start by saying that I really don't like Anaconda. It still feels very clunky. You compare this to Ubiquity, the Debian installer, the PopOS installer, the OpenSUSE, Calamares. Everything seems like it's all over the place sometimes. I wish, like, sometimes they give you options to the sides. I wish it was more top-down kind of options. It's just, I guess,
you mean in the installer itself?
Yeah, in the installer itself.
So you're talking about stuff like maybe, like I noticed, like when it just doesn't walk you through like each page, like you have to go into the page for, like, say your hard drive that you want to put it on. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Also, like the button that it's still all the way on top. I don't think I've seen another installer where the done button's on top instead of on the bottom. Like it almost seems like,
and the top left, isn't it, as well? Which is
weird. It seems like since every pop-up window that says like cancel or okay is always at the bottom, almost seems like a standard. You would want to place that button at the bottom.
I don't
Um,
remember where it was, to be honest with you.
Top left, I think.
It is.
So I mean, I think they should work on that as much as possible, because it's not too difficult, but it just seems like more than it should be.
And did you get irritated by the done thing?
Yeah, you gotta click done twice if there's like an error. Like I tried installing it without a grub, because I put it at a different partition, and it complained. He's like, you must confirm twice. You gotta press done twice or something. I remember that. For GNOME, I think it's pretty much default GNOME, except it has some extensions, but they're not enabled. So I'm not sure why they ship extensions that are not enabled. I don't, because I noticed once I turned on, I installed Tweak, that it had other extensions, but they weren't enabled. The only one that was enabled was the
background logo.
Yeah. And also I tried enabling the horizontal workspaces, and that did not work. So I'm not sure why was that even included if it didn't even work.
Well, that was one of my questions. Is that installed by default in GNOME, or is that a Fedora thing that they added those extensions and disabled them? I don't know why you would install them and disable them. So it must be a GNOME thing that they're installed. Can anybody? Does anybody know?
I'm not really a GNOME user, so I wouldn't know. But I would think GNOME would ship without any extensions, wouldn't it?
I thought vanilla GNOME had no extensions.
I believe
so
GNOME
too.
have extensions. As far as on Arch, it doesn't have extensions on default.
There
that aren't
are
issued by Arch.
Yeah, there are 5 extensions installed that are not enabled. Yeah, 5. So anyway, I'm sorry, Aris, go ahead.
The icons, I mean, this is always like one of my pet peeves about GNOME, but the icons, I really don't like those folder icons. To me, they're like the worst icons you can have for like any distro. They remind me of cheap vanilla folders, but I guess it's just personal taste. Because like,
We're so superficial here, man.
I can't think of another distro that has like worse icons by default. I know those are just GNOME folders, but I mean, I don't care. I don't know if people complain about the other icons, like different apps. I really don't bother me, but those folder icons, like GNOME, the weighted ones, are really bad for me. And I again, I guess this is aesthetics, but the wallpaper that ships by default, I think that's like the worst one that they bring in the collection. Like I would use any of the other wallpapers that it has, and that I would not include that one. It doesn't seem very appealing to me, and it doesn't say Fedora either. You would want like something that has the badge of Fedora to promote it, but it doesn't have that either. I think, in my opinion. I tried. I didn't use it a lot in GNOME. I just installed it and looked around. It didn't have a lot of applications. I also installed Plasma. It was okay. Pretty much also like default Plasma. It did have Conqueror though. I don't see the need for Conqueror if you have Firefox. I tried installing the different repos with GNOME, and with the GNOME software, it was good. And Discover, I tried using, but I couldn't. I think I'm not sure about the GNOME software, but I know for Discover, it doesn't give you an option to install RPM Fusion, which I think you need for like other applications that are not in there by default. Overall, I was a little underwhelmed, but I wish I knew what people who use Fedora have to say. What are the benefits of it? Because I know that Fedora always has like these innovative new features that are like down the system core that they always make, but I'm not sure exactly what are the benefits versus something like Debian or like maybe Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is fresher than Debian. That's about it.
I think he's a mind reader, Rocco.
I think he is. Me and Zeb had this conversation like right before the show. We were just talking, and you know, like, well, Aris, you said about the icons, and I think it's not so much that the icons are bad. It's that we're spoiled, I think, in the Linux world with all of these distros coming up with brand new icon sets, and there's just need to kind of be updated. So I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's so much that they're bad. It's just they're not new and flashy like we're used to seeing in most distros today. So, but yeah, you made a lot of points that I thought about, and yeah, like I said, I had this same conversation, and we'll go into that maybe once everybody's opinion is done. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Voilin, welcome. And did you try Fedora?
Yes, I've tried Fedora, but kind of troublesome experience at first because first time using this laptop with VirtualBox, and VirtualBox didn't really work that well. So put in a new hard drive, installed it, but ran into the usual issues with this laptop. Whenever I try to change the sounds in Fedora, it just goes crazy and crashes.
Wow.
But I've had that on all my Linux installs. At the moment, I'm using Arch, and same issue. I cannot use a function key and my volume up.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. First time that I've tried Fedora was 2015, if I remember right, and that was when I was still distro hopping a lot. And now I'm using. Well, I've installed it on a separate hard drive with GNOME, and I was only able to spend like 1 hour testing it, so I will have to wait until next week to say more about it. Right now, I'm experiencing issues with volume, and also screen tearing is quite bad. But that might just be the hardware on my laptop.
You're muted, Zeb.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll look forward to a further update from you from next week. Tony, how did you get on with Fedora?
Very well, actually. I went for the cinnamon version, and it looks really good. It works really well, and I had absolutely no problems with it, much to my surprise. I messed about with the theming. It's got all the normal icons and themes that you'd get if you went cinnamon with Linux Mint. I can't, to be honest, I couldn't see an awful lot of difference between 31 and 30.
Now, Tony,
from a user point of view.
Tony, you've installed a ton of distros. Does that installer bother you at all compared to like Ubiquity and Ubuntu?
No, not really. I just get used to them.
Tony, didn't you?
Yeah, yes. I'm so used to installing different things with different installers that if they move stuff about and it's in a different place, I just move to where it is.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I don't like about Fedora is the way it does the hard drive partitioning. It's a bit odd compared to most other distros. And I find that when I come to wipe it and put something else on, that sometimes I have difficulties then, which I don't have with other distros. But
does it use the logical volume thing by default?
No, I don't think
LVM?
so. I don't think it does LVM by default.
No, I don't think it does either.
I don't think so.
Quick question, Tony. Did you have to install RPM Fusion, the repo?
I didn't bother. No, I just messed about with DNF Dragora.
Cool. Interesting.
But it does default to LVM when you go into manual partitioning.
Oh, I didn't do manual partitioning. I just let the thing do what it.
And then it probably just went with LVM and went with standard. What you need for minimum partitions. And,
I don't particularly like
saying
DNF.
that you could add on to it later.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't particularly like DNF Dragora, but you can get most of the software you want through it. But yeah, overall.
You had no problems playing media files and MP3s and all that sort of thing?
No, I had no problems at all. It worked really well. I mean, version 30 did exactly the same for me. Like I said, I can't really see an awful lot of difference, but obviously it's been tweaked and improved a bit. Otherwise, there's no point bringing out a new version. But yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up, definitely.
Cool.
That's cool. Good feedback. Dan Kelly, you get a chance to try Fedora this week?
Oh, he's putting his glasses on. He's getting his list.
Excellent.
You're muted, Dan.
Yeah, you are muted, Dan.
All right, so if you are not talking, you should probably mute just in case.
First of all, I did put it in a VM first and played with the extensions and all that. I got the GNOME version because I wanted it to really hurt. And it seemed to work fine. It seemed to work fine for me in VirtualBox, so I kind of took a liking to it and decided to put it on some real hardware. But when I got to the installer, because my drive that I use for hardware is set up for EFI boot, system / home, and then swap. So that's how it's set up. And my data stays in the home and just floats from distro to distro. When I ran into trouble is I couldn't get it to go past the manual setup. And in the manual setup, when you go there, it keeps trying to throw the LVM at you when you really need to go to standard setup. And I couldn't get it to take at first, but what I realized is when you went to set up for the slash and the / home, it offered it to you for mounting points. It did not put anything or a drop-down box in there for / boot / EFI, which after doing some reading, I figured that out and was able to put that in. Then it would accept it and install it. And when it was all done, my data was all there too, which was kind of a, I've done more reading with this than playing with it, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, after I got it installed, it gives you a welcome screen and it has 3 videos in that screen. Every time I wanted to play one of those videos, it'd completely lock up the system and I had to just hit the manual restart on the computer. So you could read the text from the text links, but I could not watch the videos they had supplied with it, even though it looked like that was a pretty neat idea. I had continuous problems with the whole computer locking up every time I was trying to do anything, or about, let's say, every 5 minutes. The computer just freeze up and poof, and you couldn't do nothing. Then I got on Telegram, and some of the nice, fine people on Telegram told me to switch it off Wayland onto Xorg when you boot it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I got around to that, and when I got into the system, I checked the gear and put the Xorg in place, and that seemed to fix the freezing up problems. I forgot to go back though and check them videos. I couldn't find the welcome screen again. The software store, it needs some work. It really does. I mean, there's stuff that's not in there. When you want the system to update, there's no progress bar. It just sits there and says it's updating. There's no progress bar to show. It could say like it needs 24 updates. So it'll sit there on 24 updates for 15 minutes. Then poof, it'll change and tell you your updates are installed. I found that kind of a little nerve-wracking. I installed and added the RPM Fusion because I needed some things. I also have an Nvidia card, and Zeb, you asked about that. I don't know if it put the drivers in or not. Obviously, it'd have to get a halfway decent looking screen, but there is no console to open for Nvidia to tinker with any of its little toys. I could not get that. It would install, if it installed it. Mine did not install the little Nvidia console that's got all the settings and stuff like that for your monitors and all that, and tinker toys that come with an Nvidia card. But you got probably a much newer card than I got. I got the 1080 Ti.
That should be.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a rock solid. That's the like almost the industry stable version. That should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I installed the RPM Fusion because I wanted to install Steam because I wanted to game on Fedora. Impossible. I mean, it installed it. It wouldn't open. It boils down to that Fedora 31 does not seem to have 32-bit libraries anymore.
So I actually have a solution to that.
Mine works out of the box. Yeah, weird.
You're using Nvidia. How did you install the drivers?
I checked the install third-party software thing when it was installing.
Yeah, that doesn't do it.
Yeah.
You have to, when you put the RPM Fusion stuff in, you have to do a special AK mod Nvidia drivers pseudo line or whatever it is. I can't remember the exact terminology now.
When I put the Steam flat pack in it, the Steam would work, but I had an issue with my games that were backed up in different spots were no longer visible to be found.
Well, there you go. Flat pack. There's your problem. Next.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
But you know, if you look around in the system folder, all the other distros I looked at have a lib32 folder in the system area. This Fedora does not. It has lib64, but no 32. And from what I got, you know, off of the internet, that Fedora doesn't support 32-bit anything anymore.
So, Dan, really quick, on those Steam libraries, you have to actually go and manually add those, generally.
Add that folder?
You have to go tell Steam, hey, my games are here.
Oh, you're talking about when I was using the flat pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're installing on the same hard drive you have another system on, and you're using a flat pack there, and you're using something, you know, the Deb or whatever on the other one, I would imagine the settings are completely different.
Well, yeah, because when it wanted to restore your backed up games, it was looking in a different spot than normally the Debian version has it. But when you put that that stuff over, it would start restoring it, but then it would crash.
Yeah, big tip there. Don't use flat pack.
Right.
Now, I usually have good luck with flat packs. I'm on Debian right now, and you know the latest, newest stuff is not in the Debian repo. So the only way you're going to get it's flat packs, or you're going to get tar balls. And that's what my machine's glued together with. I used to be a good Fedora, really big fan of it. I got Fedora 8 here, Fedora 9. Actually, Ben Fitzpatrick has the originals. These are the backups. I gave him the originals for his birthday.
Nice.
But I did an awful lot of reading on it, but for me, I can't get it to work good enough for me to live in it for a week. And that's all I really have to say about it.
All right. Well, yeah. So we got another week. My suggestion is maybe try adding the RPM Fusion repo. Maybe think about that.
It's in there. I put all that in.
You did?
The free and non-free.
Oh, okay. That's good.
I spent about 8 to 10 hours playing with this between working on things, just get things working, and reading the Fedora wikis and help pages. And
well, I'm sure one of us in the Telegram group will be able to help you get it running there, Dan.
I hate to ask them for any more, man. I've been driving them nuts, and I bless them people. They've really tried really hard to help me. And
well, half of those people are in here, so I'm sure they'll be willing to help you.
As one of those people, I say I live for that. So go for it.
You live for that.
All righty. Well, thanks for the feedback, Dan. Jason, did you get a chance to try Fedora this week?
Actually, I've just finally got the Fedora to install on my laptop. I was having a lot of difficulties getting it just to install. For whatever reason, it didn't like the fact that I had Linux, another version of Linux on there. I had Linux and X on there, and I tried to partition it to do, both of them, and it wouldn't accept it. It just kept failing and failing. So I just then after I formatted it, let the Fedora take over and do the whole drive, it still failed. So I had to tinker with some things, and basically I just shut it down, pulled out the USB, put it back in, and for whatever reason, the third time was charm, I guess, and that one installed. And I literally just got it finally to install, like an hour and a half before the show started, and other difficulties started happening, with trying to get things to update and updates failing, and so I haven't had a good experience
Yep.
yet. I'm being very, very new to Linux myself. I've only been messing around with Linux about month and a half. So I'm like Dan Kelly over there. I think he's the one that's a distro hopper.
Yeah.
Or is that Tony? One
Well,
of the two.
we all do.
And I've tried, probably 15, 20 different distros in that time frame, and have so far landed on Linux Mint. But I'll play around Fedora some more, and next week when I'll give a more thorough investigation on it, description of my experience once I actually get to play with it.
Sounds good.
All right. Big Pod, sir.
Haven't been playing much with Fedora 31, but I have to say, what I've seen, it works way faster than Fedora 30. The GNOME edition works way faster, and Anaconda installer is, if it works, it's great. If it doesn't, it's pain in the ass. And that's about it. What I have to say. Mostly playing with the server version. Installed it as a VM on my server. It works great. Had some problems with packages, which aren't actually the problem of Fedora, but the programs I use. So it works great. I don't know what else I can say. Maybe I'll have something next week, but I don't think so.
All right. Adam.
Hey.
So you like Fedora, right?
I've been known to shill a couple times. So first off, I want to say to folks like Dan Kelly who have had issues, I haven't been able to help. I would love to have helped, but I've been recovering from surgery and stuff, so sorry about that. So first, Fedora's great. GNOME, the newest version of GNOME, is extremely smooth. By the way, if you're using any other version than GNOME, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. But that is what it is. So the GNOME version is great. The Wayland support on there is actually really good. Probably the best that's out there. I know like Wayland has its issues, don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna get the best of the worst, it's gonna be GNOME. And I think GNOME 334 is extremely smooth, very fast, very performant, especially on a moderately powerful machine. You don't even need like a crazy machine for it. So I heard some criticisms of the installer. Okay, if it's hard to find a button at the top left, that's fine. But no, it's fine. I get it. Like most things are in one place, and these guys want to be different. That's fine. As far as the having to confirm twice, I think that's a good thing, especially when you're doing something like installing without grub, because that's generally not a normal way to install things. So if it's trying to tell you like, hey, double check what you're doing, then maybe you should double check what you're doing. And if you want it, click it twice. Good times. I think it's a good thing. As far as the partitioning goes, LVM is the way you should always partition your disks because LVM is amazing. Once you learn how LVM works, it is extremely flexible. Resizing partitions, doing software RAID if you want to, but more specifically, like if you have an extra small disk, for example, you could span your partition over into the other disk really easily without having to reformat or repartition or anything. You just add a physical volume and to the disk and then extend the volume. It's really easy once you get used to it. So the fact that they default to LVM means that I don't have to set up all that by myself. I love it.
We have to chat in Discord then, because LVM for me on multi-boot is a nightmare.
Oh, I got you, man. I got you.
Good.
So people complain about the theme. Edwait is great to me. I think it's clean. It's simple. The icons, yeah, they're not flashy or amazing and bright colors, but they're icons. I mean, they're just there to be like a folder or whatever. Most of the icons I see are the icons for the actual app, and I don't want to see like some weird looking icon because these people they put effort into making their own branding, And if I look at Spotify, I look at Spotify's logo, I instantly recognize it. If somebody puts it in a square or whatever, it's not instantly recognizable. So I'm okay with, people not replacing people's icons. The packages are pretty kept fairly up to date. They're not like arch up to date, but they're pretty up to date. People are talking about RPM Fusion. RPM Fusion is a great solution for the problem because Fedora wants to keep things as free as possible without being entirely free, but like pretty free. And to some people, that's a good thing or bad thing, or however you want to see it. But having them as a separate repo means that they can then, in the separate repo, ship things that are license encumbered or whatever. So like drivers and whatnot. People were talking about installing the Nvidia drivers. RPM Fusion's website has very detailed instructions on pretty much every scenario for installing Nvidia. There's a section called How To and How to Nvidia. That in that section there is lists for not just new cards but old cards, things like 32-bit support, installing it on Silverblue, and there's a ton of documentation on there. And as far as like almost every single edge case for installing Nvidia drivers. So if you need a resource to go to that, RPM Fusion has it in the How To section and How To/Nvidia.
I've
So
just
go
stuck
there.
it in the YouTube link because I agree, Adam. That's probably one of the best Nvidia how-tos I've ever read.
Yeah, there is. It covers pretty much everything. I know some people like Zeb don't like Flatpaks, but I think Flatpaks integrate really well into the system. They're included in the GNOME software once you install, like FlatHub, for example. And Fedora does an interesting thing with GNOME software in that if you find a package that has both a repo version and a Flatpak version, there will be a drop down in the top right where you can choose whether you want to install the repo version or the Flatpak version from the Software Center. So be aware of that. I know some people don't see it. Sometimes it defaults to Flatpak, sometimes it defaults to repos. They got to work on that. If you haven't heard about it, Fedora Toolbox, great like containerized workflow thing for mainly for developers. But if you wanted to like try a piece of software without messing up your computer, look into Fedora Toolbox. You can install it in there. It has its own kind of containerized Fedora install, and you can do whatever you need to. And if you mess it up, just blow away the container, and it's all good. The Copper repos is something nobody's mentioned. Those are basically like PPAs for Fedora, and they come with the pros and cons of both, of PPAs. But there's a lot of software that's out there that people have packaged that may be, kind of a pain to compile or something. And there's probably a Copper repo out there. If it's not something that can be flat packed, really, something like a driver for a gaming keyboard or mouse or something like that, then you'll probably find it in a Copper repo. The offline updates, I don't know if anyone's experienced that at all. When you update, it wants to restart. If you do it, and most of you haven't used the GNOME version, so probably not. So if it offers to update and restart, I know people are like, "Hey, what is this, Windows?" But let's be real here. Like there are reasons to do that. One of the main reasons is when you update packages, if you go to open another application or even a part of the system, if there are version issues, like it loads a different version of a toolkit, for example, you might have issues with the app crashing. You might have issues with a component not loading properly. Plasma is notorious about this. Like if you update part of Plasma and then suddenly you can't like log out or something, that's generally why they do the reboots and then updates. My biggest criticism of it is Bugzilla needs to die in a fire. If you ever had, I know everybody harps on reporting bugs, but dude, I don't blame you if you don't report a bug to Fedora. I really don't.
I agree.
So the issues that Dan was having with Nvidia, under the RPM Fusion instructions, there is a section in there for if you want to get Steam and all that running, and there's a command for installing the 32-bit libraries for the Nvidia drivers. That's required for Steam. Steam won't load if they don't have 32-bit GL stuff. The Flatpak includes a runtime for GL32, and that's why the Flatpak ran, but not the base one. The base one is looking for a system-wide 32-bit library there. So that's included in the NVIDIA driver thing.
I
Also,
kept looking and looking and looking until it drove me nuts. I probably was looking in the wrong spot, Adam.
it's all good.
But thanks for telling us that, though.
Yeah, no problem. And also your issue with you were having issues with importing your games into Flatpak. So the Flatpak for Steam that you were using has permissions probably to just read your home directory and nothing else. So if you're like pulling it off of another drive, that's probably mounted under run media, etc. And that wouldn't be able to read those properly because of permissions. That's possibly what's happening. That's my best guess.
The backups were in not Steam backup.
Yeah, they were just files, right?
They were backups that Steam had made by me requesting it to do that.
Okay, where were they stored on a separate drive?
No, they were stored in the home directory and .steam backups. But the thing is, the Flatpak wants you to go to a .flatpak deeper into that folder.
Yeah, usually go into home.var and then app, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets really deep. And then when I copied one program there, it'd start to install it and then it would crash.
That kind of makes sense. But I can help you out with that later. But anyway, if you're interested at all. But anyway, that's my take on Fedora. Everybody, I know you have issues. It's great. Learn to love it.
Thank you, Adam. You're muted, Zeb.
Yep. I was going to say, yeah, let's unmute myself at first and move on to Thomas. Thomas, did you get to try Fedora in a VM?
No, I did not. I haven't even had a chance to download the ISO this week with all the development and debugging I've been doing and upgrading my Nextcloud and Pi-hole. So I'm sorry, I have not.
That's all right. That's cool. It's not a problem. It's not a prerequisite of coming on the show. You don't have to do the challenge. You can, because everybody at some time or another has normally installed the distro, so you can make a comment on previous knowledge. So yeah, not a problem at all. Barbara, did you try one of your X Macs or ThinkPads?
I didn't try it. I did download it, but it took about a half an hour to download. Did anyone else have that problem?
No.
No, negative.
And I was really surprised at that.
What pack?
No, it took a half an hour to download. I just
The
did the one
ISO?
for ISO. Yeah, the ISO.
Yeah, it took me
I have the same
longer.
problem.
It took me 45 minutes.
Okay, I feel better then. So it wasn't just me.
Wow.
But I haven't put it on anything yet, so it's just sitting there in downloads.
Wow. That is a long time.
It's simmering.
Yeah.
Simmering. Gotcha. Dave, you get a chance to try Fedora?
If I can actually get my voice working.
I had that problem
Yes.
last week.
Yes. Unlike Adam, no, I don't like GNOME. So I installed the Cinnamon version. And it installed right in. Yes, it's a different installer, but it's something I've used before, so I knew how to adjust to it, so it didn't really bother me. I didn't really notice it that much. Let's see. Zeb mentioned that it seems slow on the uptake, just very clunky. I noticed that after I got stuff installed, the first time I opened an app, it would seem to take forever to open, almost as if it was building all the caches for the app. Then subsequent times that the app's opened, occasionally it would be a little slow, but it seemed much more normal after the initial opening of an app. Oh, by the way, my name is Dave, and I do not distro hop.
Okay.
Whatever.
Adam, I probably will be getting in touch with you at some point because LVM is one of those things I really do want to learn. But Fedora was good. It took my setup script just fine. I forgot originally that I wanted to try Ryan Duskeek's app install script that he has on GitHub, but I forgot to use that. So I was installing stuff on my own, and it was rock solid, playing very nicely. And then I started trying to make it do things with VirtualBox that it didn't want to do. And I forgot a / in a command in the terminal and managed to wipe out my user bin folder. Needless to say, that means everything stopped working.
Yeah.
So this afternoon became a nuke and pave. It's been about an hour and a half since I started the nuke and pave, and it's back up, back all set up, rock solid again. OBS is in, everything's working, Steam is working. It's a good solid distro. It's like OpenSUSE. It's like one of those stone buildings that would take a trebuchet to tear down. Not that I don't often do that to distros.
What did you say, Dave? You said some kind of word I never heard. What?
Trebuchet.
Trebuchet. Yeah.
What is that?
Is that one of those things that slings rocks at walls?
Yeah, it's the
you
wood,
mean
yeah.
like a big slingshot? Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's the catapult, but it looks like it acts like a slingshot.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was
So-
a guy down the road who had one in his front yard for years.
In his yard?
Yes, in his yard.
Nice.
And his balance
things are fun.
point was the balance for it. He had 50-pound bags of cement.
Oh, so you got some power out of that thing.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Maybe he didn't like his neighbors across the road.
Honestly, the only thing I haven't had a chance to really check yet that I've heard complaints about so far is the playing of videos, because I don't have any videos loaded on it yet. I'll throw some on and try it later and go next week. But so far, it's treated me well, and we'll see how the next week goes.
Cool. Good stuff, Dave. Yuri, you're up. Did you get a chance to try Fedora?
Well, no, actually, I'm very new to the show. I just joined.
Welcome.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Yeah. Well, I tried Fedora once.
Yeah.
Just to check it out. I'm not a fan of GNOME or systemd or package managers.
Gotcha.
So,
Old school.
yeah. No, actually, I prefer AppImage, and I do actually have a distribution focus on AppImage.
Well, you were going to have to talk about that later then.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get done with Fedora, and then maybe we'll come back to that.
Sure.
There is Philip from Manjaro. What's happening, brother?
Well, I'm trying to install Fedora in a virtual machine, and I'm still stucking at the first update. It feels like Windows, but okay.
It's all good. I don't, there are certain distributions out there, and Adam, I don't know if Fedora is on that list or not, that doesn't play well with virtual machines, or do they?
It's just fine.
I didn't have an issue. I know what he's talking about with the update, though, because there is no progress bar. It'll sit there 27 updates, and you click update, it'll just park right there.
I have
You
an
just
update
gotta
bar.
wait it out.
No, I have a progress bar. It's by 31%, so it's updating. I have to shut down Fedora and then restart it, and then does like Windows.
Yeah, it does
Yeah, I
have
had
that.
to do the same thing.
Does have that Windows-ish feel to that update process. Yeah. Yep.
Which update are you using? Using DNS Dragon or DNF from the command line?
GNOME software, probably.
GNOME software, yes.
Yeah, that's your problem. Go to the command line. Everything works better there.
So I did cover this, that it is actually a better way to do updates when you do them offline as opposed to on a running system, to avoid issues like, version issues and package libraries loading incorrectly and things like that. There's a reason for it, but
yes,
I know you can agree with it or not, but it's there.
Yeah, but that's one of the greatest tricks of Fedora. I mean, I amaze people when I'm sitting here watching something, or not Fedora, but Linux. I'm sitting here watching something on Firefox, and I'll uninstall it, and it keeps working. They go, well, how can you do that? I said, because it's still in the system. And until I shut it down, but the minute you shut it down and reopen it again, you'll get the new version. So not quite sure.
Well, that works
how-
with some applications, but when you have like multiple components that are being updated at different intervals, that can cause issues. Like the best example I can give is with Plasma. You can have like updates for part of the desktop, but not part of other things, and you can have issues where like you go to my biggest gripe is when it updates, and then I go to restart the machine and I go through the menu, but because the current loaded version expects a certain version and then the new version on disk that it's loading is different from that version, it will not bring up the login, the log out, restart thing at all, because they're incompatible versions. So if you have it to where the software center sends a systemd restart and then boots into an offline updater, you don't have those problems.
But then that's why you've got the reset button on your machine.
Well, yeah, of course, journaling, right? It's amazing. It solves everything.
I love it. All right, we'll let you finish your updates, Phil.
Okay.
DJ Ware, welcome to Biddle, brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's about time you show up.
They let me out for good behavior.
Did you get to try Fedora, man?
No, I've never tried Fedora. I run it as a daily driver, so it's.
Well, tell us about all the good things about it.
It's stable, it's fast. The development environment is what I need. I don't have to be searching around a lot for tools and finding things that don't work together. But one of the biggest, I'll tell you some of the downsides with Fedora 31. And Adam, I'm sorry, but rebooting the machine, no, that's a bad idea. I mean, if you're trying to run this and you're trying to do some tests with it, and you just happen to run some updates to pull in a package, I'm sorry, restarting my machine, I'm not happy with that. And as far as LVM goes, I think that's the wrong direction. That's old. Get rid of it. Go to ZFS. Go to Zed. So those are my comments on it. I use boxes. I use Toolbox. I love RPM-OS tree because I can roll back my updates if I have to. So I like seeing some of the things that are coming out of Silverblue and coming and showing up in 31. So that's my balance to look at it. I don't have much more to say about it other than if I hated it, I would have dumped it long ago, and I don't hate it. I like it a lot.
Cool. Thanks very much indeed. Alan, Penguin Revolution, you're up, my friend.
Hey, what's up? Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, and you're possibly a little overly loud.
Okay, well, let me change that real quick, and then I'm having issues today, so
welcome to Linux.
So yes, I did try the Fedora this week. I am actually using the LXDE version because I like trying something different. I use GNOME all the time, so I try something different. It actually works great. I actually don't know what Dan is having problems with gaming. I game on it all the time, so I've never had an issue with Steam, but I don't know what he's doing. But I do like LXDE a little bit. I like the fact that I can just put it on my 4 gig laptop and not have to worry about memory running out. The only issue I have with it is a couple programs I use that are in the repos in RPM Fusion. So that's a bit of an issue, but I found those, I built those from source, they're just fine. Other than that, I think it's great.
All right, lovely. Thanks very much. You broke up a little bit at the end there, but we got the basic gist of it. What were the programs that you couldn't find or that weren't working for you?
What programs were they?
Yeah, you said there was a couple of programs that you had.
Yeah,
there was a couple of programs you said you had difficulties with.
One of them was what was it? I have to look right here.
All right, not to
That's
worry.
my computer just crashed.
Yeah.
Can you? I gotta change computers. I'll let you know in a minute.
Yeah. All right, then, not to worry. Thanks very much indeed for the update. Vash.
Yeah.
Hey, can you
Are
hear
you
me?
there? We certainly can. And how was your experience with Fedora?
I only got to the point of getting it installed in a VM. I was focused a little bit more on getting Vert Manager to cooperate and KVM and all that. So I've got that installed, so I'll probably mess with it more this week and see what I can figure out.
Cool.
Sounds good. Wendy, I know you're a happy Manjaro user, but did you get a chance to try Fedora?
I didn't. I'm just here this week to say hi.
Well, it's good to see you. Let's see. Eric, are you back?
Well, we could try. Can you hear me?
Yep, we
Certainly
got you.
can.
Wow. Well, I dare start the video.
Hey, there you are.
Wait, let's. Okay. I love Linux. Have I said that recently?
Maybe not today.
I'm using a different computer. It must be the computer. I don't know. Yeah, I tested Fedora back when it was in beta, and I've been using it off and on for a couple years. Fedora is one of those things where I've missed a lot of the stream. I apologize if I'm repeating what other people have said, but they're pretty strong in their convictions and they have pretty set ideals. RPM Fusion it's something you add after because it's not something they really believe in. They don't actively fight it or something like that, but it's just not what they're about. And also Fedora is not really meant for a general use desktop. So for folks to just pick it up and think it's going to be Ubuntu or Manjaro or something like that, that's really not how it works. So if you do add RPM Fusion, like you said, Zeb, it's adding the drivers and the repos and all that stuff. It's really not difficult, and it does close that gap mostly, not completely. There's some things I do like about it. I love the spins. I think whoever's maintaining them do a really, really good job of packaging those desktops. And there goes my video. And yeah, I think someone had mentioned the idea that Fedora does look forward and they do some cutting edge things. And that's really kind of the purpose of Fedora in a lot of ways. Something that comes to mind is they're looking at using Pipewire instead of Pulse in the next few releases, and probably will be the first distribution that does that. And for better or for worse, if folks can remember back to the early days of Pulse Audio, not that it's so fantastic now, but it's functional now. And I think Pipewire is going to be an interesting alternative in a way. So I'm looking forward to that. And I love that they do push the edge of sort of state of the art on Linux. So yeah, it is not easy to run as a daily driver, in my opinion. Certainly not as easy. And there are times where I'm just a lazy person, and for me, running Ubuntu based something is just the more attractive option. So that's not a knock against them. That's not what they're trying to do. So it's not even like you can necessarily compare them. And they're on the 31st release, so that tells you something. They've got a long track record of producing solid distribution, and I think it's a wonderful thing to have it out there for folks who are looking for that type of workstation environment. So,
all right. Hopefully you get your video working, dude. Either way, Steve, you are up, sir.
I'll give a review next week. I haven't had a chance to install it this week.
Okay.
But hello, everybody.
Hello, Steve. Anybody else want to put any final thoughts on this week's Fedora?
It's not that I really am bashing on Fedora. It's just little things that I came across that I need to actually wind down and spend some more time fixing each little piece. I'm sure once they stumble across the right thing, then that problem be solved. I move on to the next one. It's just I got slammed with one thing after another after another. How can you fix something when your computer's freezing up because you need to switch from Wayland to Xorg.
Right. Yeah. Now
I thought
see,
your list was good, Dan.
I installed it on the AMD test machine, and I didn't have no stuttering. I didn't have any of those issues. It's been running flawlessly since I installed it. So
Were you
Cool.
running
I am so
Plasma
glad
or
that
KDE? Or I mean, no.
Yeah, it's kind of like the greatest compliment I can give it is it's one of the hardest distros for me to break.
and you can break them, let me tell you.
Yeah. And I'm so glad Ryan wasn't here to hear that, Rocco.
I know,
We would never
but it
have
is
heard
on
the end of
it is
I
on
mean,
YouTube now, so it'll never be
Oh,
gone.
dear.
I will never give up Nvidia for the main machine, though. Anyway, going forward here, we will be talking about Fedora next week. We'll be trying it out again for another week. We will come back next week and give our final thoughts on it. And if you guys have any issues, please don't hesitate to go to the Telegram group, and somebody will be in there to help you. And Adam gave so much great information on how to fix things and where to go to find the answers. So appreciate that. And there you go. There's our take on Fedora 31 so far.
And don't forget, next week with a fair wind, we might have Matt from Fedora on.
Yes. I was trying to get a hold of Matthew through Twitter, and hopefully he'll be able to make it. Maybe. We'll see. Possibly.
Don't forget about discourse also, because I started a thread on there a couple months ago. I have not kept up with it. Shame on me. But the various little quirks of the various distros that we try. And the first one I put in there was Fedora because, well, that is what I know. So.
Cool. Thank you. So, Rocco, do you want to ask that question that you asked before we started the show? Because I think that might get some thought-provoking answers.
Well, Eris had mentioned it or mentioned part of it, and I installed Fedora, and I'm looking at it, and obviously it uses DNF, so it's a little bit different, but it's easy to pick up. But it is a vanilla GNOME install, and my question, it just crossed my mind while I was trying it out, was why would I choose this over something like Ubuntu? So I guess my question to everybody here is, what is the advantage of using something like Fedora over something like Ubuntu?
Plumbing.
But like
So-
a real world reason. I mean, I know what you're trying to say, but like it's coming from somebody who tries distros and then takes them off and tries distros and takes them off, not sticking with these distros all the time, I'm not going to really get a feel for the plumbing. So,
well, then you're kind of unsavable to begin with.
What are you saying,
I had
dude?
special.
Well, I mean, like that's kind of the issue, right? Like if you're the type of user that just, surface level uses things, then fundamentally they're all kind of similar, right?
Yes, that's
Like-
what I'm kind of saying. Yes.
So just use the first one. Use the one that has the coolest name. Use the one that has like the coolest color you
Pop
like.
OS has the coolest name, so that's
there
why
you
I'm
go.
using that.
Popos it is.
So I think what Adam is kind of getting at is, I mean, if you work in the Red Hat or CentOS or something like that in type environment, I mean, it's going to be a similar setup. You're going to know a lot of the same stuff from that. So that would be one thing I would think of.
Well, I can tell you that when I was first dipping my toes in the Linux pool, and really the only two that I knew of was Ubuntu, and I believe that was Ubuntu 14.08. I think was something like that, and Fedora. And they're just starting the cores on that. I think Fedora Core 4 was the one that I tried out. And the what struck me at that time was Ubuntu was reminding me too much of a Macified environment, which I detest. And not that I won't work in one. If someone handed me a Mac, said, "Hey, this is your computer from now on," it's like, okay, whatever. But I mean, I don't like Steve Jobs' philosophy of separating you from the operating system. And when I tried Fedora, I found I was more in control of the machine, more, it felt like an original Windows type, Windows NT type of environment. And so I was drawn more towards that. And then when I was taking my systems administrations class, we were using Fedora Core 6, and so I was right at home with that, and I just kind of kept with it, no matter how many times I've deviated away. And Ubuntu was really started looking, like a really nice alternative and stuff like that, but it's still not pulling me away from Fedora because I've just been well steeped in that.
Has anybody been drawn to Fedora because of the FOSS side of things? Because unless you put the RPM Fusion repos in, you are really limited in what type of software you can get your hands on. So was anybody drawn by the FOSS side of it?
And tell you, FOSS wasn't even a consideration in my formative years. So.
When I used to use it, I actually started, my first distro that I ever used was Aurora. That's the one I had forever. So it was a Fedora base. And when I first started using it, it was because I could get newer software on Fedora than I could, say, on Ubuntu. But now Ubuntu has kind of fixed that part of it. I wouldn't say that apt is my favorite repo manager anyway. I definitely like DNF more. But as far as software goes, I can get that in just about any place now, get some of the newer software.
Yep. That's also part of the reason part of the reason for that is like Yuri had mentioned about app images and snaps and Flatpaks, and like you can pretty much get whatever you need on any distro right now.
And that's assuming you like Flatpaks and snaps and all that.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't get this whole I don't like Flatpaks or I don't like snaps or I don't like this. I don't get that whole idea. My viewpoint of it is if I can get the software I need, what do I care if it's a Flatpak or if it's a snap or if it's an app image? I care about getting the software I need, not about what underlying the technology of the software or how I receive that software. I'm just happy to be able to use the software I want to use on any distro. And I think that's the greatest thing.
For me, it's like Dan Kelly having trouble with the Flatpak of Steam. There are applications that require tighter integration into your operating system that aren't allowed because of the security of Snap and Flatpak. That's why I avoid them. I just don't want to have to consider whether the security of the delivery form is going to interfere with my ability to use it.
But that's a valid reason, Dave. I mean, it's a valid reason to say, well, I may not be able to use it the way I want to use it, so I'm going to go with this type of software over this. But to not like it just because it's a Flatpak or not like it because it's the other type of way we distribute software, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. I agree. It's kind of like I don't like GNOME, but I'm never going to sit here and say GNOME is a terrible desktop environment. It just doesn't work for me.
I guess I need to give Flatpak another try because my whole reason why I dislike it is that when I tried it before, and I'm only talking no more than a year ago, it just gobbled up the hard disk space ridiculously. I mean, you download an app and then wallop, 1.6 gigs gone. So, 10 apps later, and you've just lost 10 gig of your 60 gig SSD or whatever you're working on. So I do need to try them again because people have told me that it now does use a lot more of what's already installed and then just adds what it needs for the other components for the app you're installing. So I don't know if Adam can shed any light on that. Has he seen an improvement? Because I just remember it as being just too ridiculously big.
I use Debian, and as everybody knows, Debian's got the oldest packages in their repo. If I want newer ones, I have to go with Flatpaks, or I have to go with app images, or tarballs, or some kind of self-contained stuff. Some Flatpaks work great. They're wonderful. Other ones, for some reason, like Dan said, they won't access certain parts of your system to work properly. It's trial and error.
Yeah.
Thomas, go on, mate.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for both sides here for a second. And full disclosure, I don't care about snaps or flat packs. I will use either one. I can see the appeal of them because if there's an app that I want that I can't find in my normal repository through apps, because I use Ubuntu-based distros for the most part, I can potentially find it in Snap or Flatpak. However, I may prefer a version of that that's in apt if I can find that. Now, great example of this, I was wanting an app
Hey, that
so I could build.
Hold on, Thomas. Hold on.
Find a pack for it though.
Thomas.
We lost you there.
Yeah, we lost your. So all we heard was so, and then we lost whatever you said.
Okay. I was wanting an app that I could make an electrical circuit computer to like diagram it, and I couldn't find a package for that in apt. I could in Flatpak though, so I grabbed that because it's what was the most available thing for me. But at the same time, I understand why some people don't like those, because I was looking recently and I forgot how many flat packs. I think like 15, 20 flat packs, each one over 200 megabytes on my system. And I'm not even using like 10 of those. I'm only using like 5 of them because I didn't remove some of them when I removed the apps that were pulling in some of them as dependencies. So I get that they can take up a lot more space because you're pulling in all these extra dependencies when you have them already on your system and you don't really need to. But at the same time, if you're running something and you want a little bit more security, I get that too. I have a server on my local network that's running Nextcloud. I'm running Nextcloud as a snap because I want a little bit more security. So I get both sides of it, but I think that honestly, the part of the community that's saying snaps, we shouldn't use flat packs, we shouldn't use app image, just needs to drop it because I get it.
Thomas, I'm gonna have to stop you there. You're really cutting out bad. Your internet connection is really
these technologies.
So we're gonna have to like. I'm sorry, brother, but the connection is so bad. We're only getting like half of your words. I understand what you're saying, Thomas, and I think that's the gist of what I was trying to say was I just don't like the tribalism of, being behind a certain format and saying I only like this or I don't like that one. Anytime we can get software on Linux that we don't have, or anytime we can make it easier to get software on a distro, that's what we should be doing. There's drawbacks and there's choices to make. So it's like, if you don't like them, that's fine. You don't have to use them. But to be negative about this certain format because you don't like it is just, it doesn't make any sense to me.
It would be like saying you don't like Windows because you use Linux.
What'd you say, Dan?
There's never been so many ways to get what you want now for software. You have choices. If you go to the Snap store and that package is a half a year out of date, and you go over and you find an app image and it's brand new, well, if you want the newest thing, there you go. You found it.
Yep.
And to be clear, I'm not necessarily opposed to Flatpak or Snap or whatever. I tend to use some Flatpaks, but my point is, you're asking why would somebody want to use Fedora over, Ubuntu or whatever because of snaps and Flatpaks and stuff. And I was saying maybe they want to avoid them And because of what we were just talking about, I personally like to have them in the package manager if I can have them there. That way I know that the package manager is doing its thing and I don't have to go and update something else.
Yep. Well, that question just crossed my mind. It wasn't like I needed a definitive answer, or like I wasn't trying to bash Fedora by saying that, is what I'm saying. My idea was, it just crossed my mind, like this is like a vanilla GNOME thing, and Ubuntu offers this. I'm wondering why people would choose this over Ubuntu. If I'm going to check out a Linux distro, why would I choose this one?
Perhaps maybe it has fixed audio issues you're looking for, or other things like that. I mean, I got a Christmas list of things. I'm looking for a distro that does better than the one I'm using.
Nothing fixes Linux audio. It's just, unless you are a jack expert, the minute you mess around with your screen, bosh, HDMI audio is going to pop back in. And what's really strange for me, maybe you guys can tell me, I've got no HDMI cables. So does DP cables use the HDMI format to supply the sound as well? Is that why they keep
I've had
coming
that
back
with
in?
Ubuntu, but I don't have that with Debian. The audio works great in Debian, except once in a while it skips.
That's because Debian doesn't support HDMI yet.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No, it doesn't.
Good ones, Paco.
I wanted to say something about the Snap. Why people hate on Snap? It's simple. It's made by Canonical. People like to hate Canonical. And second one reason is because it has proprietary backend, which is literally a service that will not get out. So what's the point of even being open sourced?
That has nothing to do for it for me.
Yeah, but for some it's a big reason why they hate Snap, because backend is not open source.
It's a fair
I
point.
mean, who cares if the backend is not open source? That's nothing that we would even use anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think Penguin, there are people that do care. And that's okay to care about that. Like, there are people out there who just want open source software on their computer. They don't want any proprietary software, and that's okay to have that opinion. I don't think it's okay to...
I mean, the server backend, not the client. Client is open source.
But that's what I'm saying. When you're talking about
sourced.
snaps, you're going to have to say that part of it is, closed. So it's like, even though it's not part of it on your machine, it still has that feel to it. So if you're that kind of person, that may bother you, and that's okay. I just don't get the idea of hating on it.
I don't think it's closed.
So I have a...
Yeah, the server is proprietary, at least last time I checked.
So I have a question about Fedora. The Flatpak package, I think, is 1.43 or whatever. I was expecting that to be higher. Is that going to get updated before the next release? Because that's basically like what Ubuntu is.
Fedora.
Yeah, maybe if Matthew shows up next week, we'll have to ask him and see. But go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, to answer your question, Rocco, I mean, in my opinion, Fedora is more of a enterprise or sort of professional focused desktop. That's sort of the point I was making earlier, was they're really not focused on general use. And so the answer to your question, why would you use it? If you're not an enterprise user, you're not a professional user, looking for those types of features, I don't know why you would. It's a fair point.
But
I agree with you, Eric. It's kind of like it feels like it's a workstation, not a PlayStation.
Well, they very specifically say that. They have said in the past several times that they target developers. They're not targeting, everyday users like Ubuntu or something would. They're targeting like people who get things, like get software written, do enterprise server administration, things like that, not general use.
They build their playhouse out of bricks, where Ubuntu builds its playhouse out of Legos.
Yeah, but isn't that the back end Red Hat side of things though? And I thought Fedora was where they played with Linux and they tested out stuff that they'll bring back into Red Hat.
Basically,
it worked.
Yeah, but Red Hat is a very enterprise focused system, so you wouldn't run a Red Hat desktop either. Would you?
No, absolutely not. But that's what I thought. I thought that's why they brought out Fedora, to get your average user used to it and working with it.
No, Fedora is
no,
just for
it's more about new technologies, like I mentioned with Pipewire, and but again, it's more focused on enterprise, on developers. You get a hardened system out of the box, right? They're very very focused on that security aspect of things. And you have to build up what you want. So I'm sure that a lot of corporations that would be using something like a Fedora desktop have a custom image, where they roll that out to their systems. And if that's what they want to run, that's what they're going to use. And yeah, I mean, I genuinely think this is what I was expecting people to say. And for what I've heard of it is not easy to run as a general desktop. It's not impossible. RPM Fusion fixes a lot of those problems. But ultimately, it's not going to be the same experience that we're sort of used to with Philip and other people making this really easy for us to just install an ISO on our system, and we're 95% of the way there. Do a little customization to our desktop, add some packages, and boom, you're done. Fedora is not like that. And I'll throw Arch in there as well. Vanilla Arch is sort of the same premise. You make it what you want it to be. So it's not a bad thing. It's just different.
All right. Anybody else want to get in on that?
Well, Fedora is more for developers, as Eric already told. So you can see it as a testbed for the Red Hat desktop and the Red Hat distribution in the end. And they try out the new technology. So if you look at systemd, everything what's coming from systemd lands first in Fedora, and they test it out if it works or not. For Manjaro, for example, we had to lower the version. We tried the new versions out, but for some reason it doesn't work out well. Arch uses the latest version and they have network issues and other stuff. So on our end, we use not the latest, but in Fedora it works because they have different drivers or network manager, different setting up. Because if you do a technology like systemd, then you know how it works. The same goes for the Flatpaks. So Flatpaks are used to have some applications. Snaps is from Canonical, they use it differently. So if you have a Flatpak, it's mostly one version, and it comes with the libraries, and you can use it. If you look at the snaps, you can even have several branches. They have the stable version, they have a testing version, and an unstable version, where you can simply test out several application versions of the same. So if you have Firefox, for example, you can have the stable version. And if you want to be a developer, you can even use the unstable version and have it parallel with the same snap. And if you're a company, you can create your own shops and explicitly say to your customers, you can only install that software. So it depends how you look at it. And if you look at distributions like Yuri does in Nitrux, they use only app images and simply don't use any package manager at all for the system. So there are always niche places you can use those things. And it's good to have Fedora out there to test it out and see new versions. You might see in other distributions like in ours, Manjaro, we have adopted, for example, the screen for the kernel. You had, for example, the BIOS in the UEFI BIOS, where you can see, okay, the manufacturer logo. And in the past, we used the Plymouth or we use everything else. And now we don't have to use anything of that because we can simply display the manufacturer logo throughout the boot up. And this technology we adopted, other technologies we explore still. So it's good to have them, but for the daily day user, it's not used now. You can try it out if you like it with the extra repositories or Flatpaks, test it out. But if you use a different approach of it, then you have to use Ubuntu, Manjaro, or whatever else is there. Easy setup for end customers. Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Well, how about we get into the whole, is it Nitrix or is it Nitrix, Yuri?
Nitrix.
Nitrix. Okay. So tell us about, like, you develop on this. So tell us about it and what it's designed for or who its user base is.
Okay, yeah. So Nitrox is currently an Ubuntu-based distribution. We have developed, I could say, a customization layer over Plasma 5 that we call NX Desktop. It's meant to be like a simpler, not uncomplicated way to use Plasma. By default, it uses two layouts, one that resembles Windows with a taskbar at the bottom of the screen, and the other one resembles, the macOS layout, the dock and the top panel and the global menu. On that customization layer, we also created some custom plasmoids. We have a custom app menu, which you can create folders. It doesn't use like the regular categorization for applications, education, games, and stuff. You can create your own folders in it, like, for example, in the GNOME overview. We also replace the default Plasma system tray. We have customized pretty much all of the default controls in the system tray. We merge we created like a notification center. We merged some of the code, the default code in Plasma with ours. And we also currently are developing a UI framework that makes use of Kirigami, the mobile framework from KDE. Actually, some of the applications that have been made in MauiKit, that's the name of the framework, are in the Plasma mobile images for the PinePhone, for the Nexus, and the other supported devices. We also have contributed code directly to Kirigami. We also created something that we call bmetal. Bmetal is a virtualization method of making pretty much all Windows software run within Linux. And we also created something that we call an operating system manager. It's called CNX. The whole point of CNX is to have something similar to the OTA mechanism in Android phones, like to check the updates and do Delta updates. Have a feature like the factory reset kind of thing on phones. And the way that CNX works is very similar to an app image. For example, when you get an app image, you just download it and run it, right? And so when you install an app image, you don't extract everything, as it would be the case with every other package manager, like app and DNF and stuff. And so with CNX is pretty much the same approach. The operating system, the distribution, is kept as a single file, as a single ISO file that can be mounted using the overlay file system. This is a kernel driver in Linux. And in that way, CNX provides persistence, because CNX in that case replaces traditional installers like Ubiquiti, Calamares, Anaconda, and precisely because CNX doesn't extract the ISO file to install it. So the whole idea of using CNX and the app images and all of that stuff is so that we can have a convergent system, and we model that whole concept in the way that Android works. So it's actually more similar to Android, because, for example, Android uses raw images. For example, the system.img file, that's pretty much the operating system itself. And when Android updates, pretty much updates that file. And so we, with CNX and app images, we want to follow that model for the operating system. That's it.
So, so I'm trying to take it all in. So Nitrix is not something you run as an installer. It's something that you actually mount.
It's not as an installer, yes. It's very different from what we are typically, from what we typically see on on Linux desktop. So for example, instead of extracting the ISO file, like you would run Calamares, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what Calamares does when it's installing the operating system is that it extracts the squashfs file, which is inside the ISO. So it extracts that file, it extracts the file, and it puts the content over the storage device. So when you go to the root of your storage device, you have the traditional Linux folders, bin, sbin, and so on. And with CNX, what CNX does, it creates something that's called an overlay, and it uses the overlay file system. That basically means that when the system boots, it creates like a mirrored version of the contents of the squashfs file. And any changes that happen by any changes from the user are kept on the overlay, but they don't affect the original, the bottom part, the bottom layer, so to speak. So there's like two layers, one that's read only, one that's writable. So yeah, pretty much that's how it works.
So for installation, is it simply a case of booting up the ISO and then clicking install Nitrix and following the prompts, or have you got to do some magic incantations in the background?
The current ISO that you can find on the website, that's only meant to have, that's meant to be like a traditional ISO with Calamares. Right now that ISO is Calamares, but I can just share you in a minute the link to the experimental ISO that makes use of CNX. And so, for example, if you download that experimental ISO, you flash it to a USB using whatever you want, DD, Etcher, whatever. And that ISO is specifically for UEFI systems. It doesn't support BIOS. And that's because CNX makes use of UEFI features to put up the systems to do what it needs to do, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so you put the ISO, and it will act as a regular live CD, right? So what you will do then is we have right now it's a very simple welcome screen, and it has basically the steps that you need to do. It only takes like three steps from the terminal. Right now it's very basic in the sense that there's not a GUI. It's just terminal commands, so you have to put the commands manually. But it's not complicated. It's just three commands, and it's basically copy and paste. And what that will do is it will deploy the ISO. So what deployment means in this case is that CNX will create a new partition table on the target device. It will use GPT, and it will create two partitions. One that's the EFI partition, and one that is the data partition. So similar to the way that Android phones work, you have very much in Android, you have basically a user data partition. And what it's going to do next, when you tell CNX to deploy the system, is it will copy the ISO file to a folder in the storage device. So basically, it will do a frugal installation. And that's it.
Okay, so this is not for dual booting machines. Someone who's got, let's say, 15 partitions on a hard disk. I can't tell it. You will put the UEFI there. You will put the data there.
Currently, no. And the idea, and here's another thing, that CNX, one of the goals of CNX is precisely that you use CNX to deploy multiple Linux distributions on a single partition. So instead of exactly doing one partition for Ubuntu, one for Arch, one for Fedora, etc., you have multiple systems in a single partition, and all of their data is kept persistent using overlay-fs. And I don't know if you are familiar with the NixOS package manager.
No.
Nope. Okay. So the way that NixOS puts the packages is that it creates, for example, you install GIMP using Nix. So it creates a folder GIMP, and then inside that folder, it creates the version of GIMP, let's say 2.10. So CNX does precisely that. For example, you deploy Nitrox and you deploy version 1.0. So you have your storage device, Nitrox, and the folder 1.0, and inside that you have the ISO file. And that's done for every other Linux distribution that you deploy with CNX.
So let me ask you, like, you have this approach of just using app images. What brought you to that?
I think the best way to put it is to have something that is precisely similar to Android, in the sense that, for example, in Android, right, we have APKs. When you install an APK, you don't install another APK prior to that. You just, for example, you download Firefox. So you install the APK for Firefox, and that's all you need to do, right? And the idea with app images is exactly the same. You download the app image, you execute the app image, and you get Firefox. And it's pretty much that so that end users don't have to deal with a package manager. So pretty much that.
A couple questions. One, is there any other programs on the system besides app image? It's only app images, correct?
Initially, yes, but we added later. But because, I mean, it is true that there are many programs packaged as an app image, we later added Homebrew, the macOS package manager, and you can install programs using Homebrew pretty much. And I also was working on trying to make Pacman work on Nitrox.
Yuri, do you have a repository of your own app images? Do you build your own app images? Is this, since it's core to your system? So, I mean, you just mentioned that you're extending it with additional software, but is the goal that you can kind of pull in additional things as built as app images, or are you just using what's out there?
Currently, we use a program called App Image CLI tool. It acts as a kind of manager to download app images, and it downloads the app images from appimagehub.com, which is a website that is part of the Open Desktop network of websites. So that's pretty much the repository, and it is so that it's an effort to centralize the place where the user obtains the app images.
Have you found that there are sort of core pieces that are missing that you would like to have as app images? I mean, I know one of the efforts that the Snap and Flatpak teams sort of undertake is reaching out to developers and asking about, can we help you package things in this format? I'm just curious. So when you pick something like AppImage and you say, we're going to try to base as much as we can around that, is there anything that you do to sort of foster continued, I guess, adoption of AppImage and that sort of thing?
Right. So we're trying to work on something that's called App Image Builder. And the point of App Image Builder is to make the process of creating an app image easier. Something that I certainly can be improved because it can be challenging to package something as an app image. Mostly because since the point of the app image is to have all the dependencies that the specific program needs, if something's missing, it's not going to work. So so it's to make it easier for other developers to port or create an app image. And for example, App Image Builder is also capable of taking existing packages like Debian packages, like tar packages, and make them an app image. So that it helps with that transition.
Very smart. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Zeb, you're muted.
Yeah. Dolphin had one in the chat, in the YouTube chat.
Go ahead, Dan.
It says, what do you assume as a base system for the app images?
Mostly it would be like what we could consider a desktop system. But it's also a case of what app images are you intending to run? Because, for example, on my desktop computer, right, I have plenty of storage, plenty of CPU power, RAM, and all. And so it's not a problem to run something like Nitrox. But on a modem or on a router, something like that, I don't have that capability. I don't have storage. I don't have, CPU power and all. So it wouldn't make much sense to have an app image that is, 300 megabytes large, or even 100, or that it requires a graphical session, So it's pretty much where the target, where you want to use the app images. That's basically. If you want to use a server, you can perfectly use app images. Granted that the app images don't require anything graphical. And yeah, so
So, quick question on the app image thing. I'm looking at the App Image Hub, and they're proud to announce that they've got 604 app images and counting. But what are you going to do about the other 30,000 images or whatever that Manjaro has or that Ubuntu has? Isn't this very limiting for the end user at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. It is very limiting because there certainly isn't that big of a software collection. And although we definitely want to push forward the use of app images, not just like by promoting them, but by also making it easier to transition from existing formats to app images. And also, I forgot where I was going.
That's all right.
So-
I hate to interrupt for 1 second, but I got to draw your attention to Jason's picture of his setup on Zoom. His profile picture is his setup of 6 monitors. It's actually, I think, a few different computers. It's absolutely awesome. I love it. Phil, you're somehow involved in doing some type of collaboration with Nitrix. So can you tell us about it?
Well, I linked in the chat here. Maybe we can link it also in the YouTube comments later on that we are already working on the NXT desktop with Nitrox together. So there is a test version out there to try it out, how the simplified KDE might look like. So you have a normal Manjaro base and the desktop from Nitrox on top. So the features which you can see like ZNX or VM Metal is not there available because we simply have the same welcome screen to test it out. So maybe we will add that later on. So it's also available in Manjaro itself. And the key feature is that we have the same goals. We have to get users over to Linux. And if some people simply don't care about how Linux works, this might be a way to get them to a free operating system. As they know, most people have Android already. They know the workflow of updating the systems on their phones. And why not do the same also in desktops? And most people will say, I will hate this. It's not my cup of tea because I don't have any package manager. I have nothing can change in the base system like other than what is prepared by the image itself. So I cannot change the desktop. I cannot change the look and feel. I cannot add base applications other than app images or maybe later snaps or flatpaks. It depends what else we will use. But nothing can be done like with a pack manager or whatever is not available there. So it's a niche distribution and a niche system, but it might fit the purpose out there. Maybe some people need it. And we try to support and see how we can collaborate with Nitrox to get more people on this kind of system.
Nice. Barb, go ahead.
Looking at your website, and it kind of is confusing because you say, you know, NX desktop is not a desktop environment. It doesn't have a file manager, blah, 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 and all these things. And yet you, I think to people new to Linux, that would be very, very confusing, the way it just kind of worded, because then later on you say that you have all these, you know, all the necessary applications. It ships with KDE applications and all that. So I think it's kind of confusing because it sounds like when you're first reading it and you're going down, and that's what somebody who's potentially wanting to use it might do. They read it and it says, oh, it doesn't have any apps. What am I going to do? It doesn't have a file manager. And then you explain it more down below. I think that's kind of confusing. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, the current, that's what I was saying like at the beginning, that the ISO file that it's currently on the website, the one that, you know, you click the button at the top, that ISO file is it doesn't have those features. It's pretty much a traditional Linux distribution. You install using Calamares and, you know, as normal, as usual. I just sent the link on the chat to the ISO that actually has CNX and focuses on the app images stuff.
Well, I put both links in the YouTube chat, the Manjaro ISO and your ISO as well. So.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Any other questions? I don't know. I think this is like, well, okay. So I made it wasn't last year's, it was the year before, wasn't it? I made a prediction that we would see a Linux distribution that was either Snap only or some type of that format, Snap, app image, Flatpak, with everything on the system basically was going to be an app image or a Snap or something like that. It wasn't going to be a traditional repo.
You said Snap, but we'll allow you to expand.
It was, you know the point. But I think this is like this may not be perfected right now, but I think the idea of it is amazing, and I want to see it like go to its fullest potential, because I think this is an awesome start to something that I think should happen.
Yeah, totally. And we are very excited to work with Manjaro in creating the putting the NX desktop, the metal integration, and hopefully make the best Linux system ever.
So the one thing I have a question about, and I know you guys have explained it a few times here, but I'm still kind of like in the air about it. Is KDE, I mean, it's based on KDE, but it's a stripped down version of KDE, or how is this working now?
In both ISOs, NX desktop is you could think of it as a expansion pack for KDE.
Okay.
I mean, it's not replacing KDE. It's not forking KDE. It's not none of that stuff. It is Plasma, but it's expanding on. Well, we say it's expanding on what Plasma does, using besides the artwork, using the custom plasmoids, and so to provide users of a more familiar, easy to use interface.
So it's like a great example of what you can accomplish with a Plasma desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to try it yet. I have downloaded the ISOs. I didn't get to try it yet, but I had watched a few videos on it, and there obviously it's not perfect like you had mentioned, and there are things that we can work on with it. But there was a lot of high praise coming from some of them videos of what the idea of it was, how well it looked. How long did it take you guys to decide on, because Plasma you can jump into and there's like 1 billion settings in there. Like, how long did it take you to get it to a point where you have this beautiful desktop?
To make the NX desktop, maybe like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, that's it would take me like 3 or 4 years. Just saying. All right. Well, hey, we did put the links in the YouTube chat. If you guys out there want to try Nitrix out, you can try. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which ISO should we download? The one Yuri, the one you posted, or the one Philip posted? Does it matter?
You can try both. The one that I posted is a lot more experimental. If you want to try CNX, if you want to try the implementation that we made of BMetal, in its current state. If you want to try the app image experience as it is currently, and definitely give feedback in how we can improve all of that. Or you can just use also the ISO that Philip posted.
Well,
that one has an access.
Well, I was going to say we'll probably add this to the distro challenge list at some point, but I personally will probably be trying it sooner than that. Just saying.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Again, just for the record, Rocco, it's now 2020, so you can't claim back wins in 2019.
Why not, Zeb? Why not?
Because I just made up the rule.
All right. Last week we had our prediction episode, and Zeb, do you know that I found that document?
Was it on your Windows partition?
No, it wasn't on my Windows partition. How dare you, Zeb? It was actually in my documents folder, not my documents folder, my videos folder, but silly me named it 2018 predictions instead of 2019 predictions, so that's why I couldn't find it. There was some extra predictions on there, but we won't go through them anymore. But one thing I did...
Are we not going to put them on a discourse then, so people can see and look back?
Yeah, yeah, I can post them on the Discord. Yeah,
That'd be cool.
but the one question that I did bring up last week was, what can we do in 2020 to better the community, make Linux better itself? What can we do as a community to forward Linux in the right way? You could do it in the wrong way. You can, evangelize for Linux and try to shove it down people's throats, and that'll never work, and that'll drive people away. And so I just put it out there last week, and I'd like to talk about it for a little bit before we have to go, of what we can do as a community to make Linux better. Anybody
For
got any
me,
thoughts?
in simple terms, it will be, let's stop all the infighting that's happening.
Yeah.
Let's work as a community. And it's a cliche, but if you build it, they will come. Those that want to gravitate from Windows 7 to Linux will do. And as you said, no matter how much you try and shove it down their throat, your average Joe isn't coming across to Linux. So let's stop trying to waste our time doing that. Let's make Linux better, because it's come on leaps and bounds. I remember going back to 2009 and it was like, really? I haven't got time for this. And in 2014, bingo, it just started working. And now there are so many distributions out there that you can say just work. People will find it. So let's stop the infighting. Let's just work together to build a better community. And the word for that community will be what gets out there and invites people back in. Like Dan said, you can sit there in a Telegram group and ask all the questions you want and get the answers all day long, because that, to me, is what Linux is about. Let's make the community what draws people in, not the back end technology, because they don't care about that. They just want something that works.
Be the nice, gentle people that we are. Just, be kind and welcoming, open arms. Hey, they use Windows. Who cares? Hey, you're still welcome.
There's two sides to it.
Way to go, Dave.
I think there's two sides to it. So advocacy is one thing, and then just being there and ready to help people that actually want to do it, right? You're right. I mean, no one's going to convince anyone, not no one, but it's a small percentage of people that you're going to convince to get away from Windows and Mac. I mean, the same discussion was coming up around, a Linux-based smartphone. Everybody's used to Android and iOS. Some people might go for it, but it's going to be the same situation, I think, in a lot of cases. And that's okay. But there are people that are interested. Maybe there are people that aren't happy about Windows 7. Maybe there are people that just aren't happy. Like we've got someone talking about, Jeremy in the chat talking about Windows is apparently blocking cryptocurrency mining for whatever reason. Situations like that where they just feel like they don't have a good choice. So yeah, being a good community, being good, sort of fostering, rapport and helping people, Telegram, discourse. A lot of it, I think, is just getting good information out there and making sure that they don't find Reddit first, and that they find maybe Big Daddy Linux first. Or
it's such a shame, dude, that our Linux is like you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I went to our Linux to talk," and they're new people, and it's like that is like some of the worst things that you can do is go to that topic and think that's the Linux community.
Well, the worst part too to me is that I would say that probably 75, 85% of the people in our Linux are actually just normal people.
Yeah.
And it's those same just, elitist, jerky people that are the ones you see over and over that are the ones that are toxic. It's like the article that you retweeted today, Rocco, about the toxicity, and it's this certain small group of people that just refuse to back down from a position of no substance other than they just have a prejudice, and they refuse to give it up, and they're going to make sure everyone knows it. And the power that they have is that people listen to them for whatever reason that they do. So that's one side of it, right? And I think we all do our part to try to help other people when we have the opportunity to do it. The advocacy part, if you know someone that's having problems with their computer and you feel like it could be an option. I mean, Rocco, your dad runs Linux, and I know several people in here have helped others to use Linux. And if you can foster that and help them, that's a great thing. I might have an opportunity. There's a local computer users group in town, and I live in Sarasota, Florida, so that means much older people, and they're probably not going to be receptive necessarily to Linux. But I talked to one of the guys that run it, and I said, why not just let me come in and tell some folks, hey, I'll just do a presentation. This is what it is. You may have never heard of it. You may not be interested in it, but if you're interested in computers, it's an interesting thing. And, maybe tie it into single board computing and pies and just how you can do different cool things with it. And the fact that Linux runs all the servers and just the awareness of it, and trying to be a good steward that way as well. I don't have any belief that I'm going to win many people over, but if I get a couple of people come up to me and that are interested, that's going to be really neat,
One step at a time, brother. One step at a time.
I would like to add one leg to what Eric has put out, and it's wonderful to support the people looking and support the newbies asking questions. But I would also encourage people to support each other. Look at the other faces around in this group. Look at the other YouTube channels for people who put out Linux content. I don't get to spend a lot of time in any one place, but I try to stop in and throw, a comment or two in a lot of different streams whenever I can. I try to stop into a bunch of different Telegram groups and add when I can. I may not always be able to do a lot, but I try to let the other people know that they do have people watching. They do have people listening. There is support. There is community here, because sometimes, it can be easy to feel like we're just talking into a void.
I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been paying a lot of attention to the Telegram system lately, and we are getting a significant uptick every single week on both Destination Linux and Big Daddy's Telegram group. And it's not a real fast, rush in, but we are picking up 2 or 3 here and there on each channel every week. People are interested. They're looking in to see what we're about.
Well, I want to know where Chicken is, because I looked at the combat stats for the Telegram group, and he has the most activity in Telegram, and then it breaks it down.
He's always there.
Well, he breaks it down by day and morning and day, and then evening and night, and he's at the top on both. So he's in there all hours of the day talking to people. So I don't know where he's at right now.
I think he wondered the other day, somebody said something about that, and he said he just never sleeps.
He doesn't.
Well, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And but he's also the best version of a personal assistant you could ever want, because it's hey, Chicken, I don't know how to do this. And he knows.
Well, let me tell you. All right. We're running out of time, but does anybody else want to get in on this at all? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll end it there. So basically what we're saying is do what you can do where you're at with the people you meet. And that is, be open to the people that you come in contact with. Don't try to force them to do anything. Don't tell them how bad their file manager is or their operating system is. Just be nice to people. All right. That's going to do it for this week. But everybody gets a last word. So, PZ, last word.
Just my usual, Rocco. Thanks very much for putting on the show. It is my favorite part of the week. Thanks to all of the wonderful people in the YouTube chat and the Zoom, because without you guys, what would I be doing at 3:30 on a Sunday morning?
Sleeping.
Probably sleeping, Zeb.
Yeah, Zeb.
And next week we're gonna have to get your predictions for this year, unless we go listen to Destination Linux. So, Chris, last word.
Sounds like a good idea.
Hope this will be Rocco 1. Your only hope. Anyhow.
Really?
No, I enjoy being able to fool around with you guys and talk shop with you guys. And every week you let me in here without a problem is a good week as far as I'm concerned. And so 2020 is starting off with a bang. And far as what we discussed tonight, it'll continue on next week, I guess.
Yep.
So with that, let's not waste anybody else's time. Everybody have a good, safe day. Stay warm. If you're in the southern hemisphere, stay cool, and let's be excellent to each other.
Yes, agreed, Chris. Agreed. Eris, last word.
Thank you for the stream. I will say that I do agree with Adam. I think restarting your computer when you update, I think that is correct. I think more distros should actually do that.
Okay. Tony, last word.
Yeah. Thanks, Rocco, as usual, for doing this. Like Zeb said, it's my highlight of the week. I really love being here with all you guys, listening and learning, and hopefully having a little bit of input every now and again. I don't have an awful lot to say. There's no distro challenge to talk about, so.
I'm sorry, Tony. Every other week, you're going to have to deal with not being able to download a distro while we're trying to.
I know. I'm going to struggle. I'll have to find something. I have downloaded the Manjaro link one and the other one to have a look at. So
okay,
we'll see how it goes. Anyway, take care, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all next week. And don't forget, Rocco, next week is the double whammy, the EU version.
You are correct, Tony. You are the man. Thank you very much.
I can't wait.
I forgot
Just thought
about
I'd
that.
remind you in case you forget.
Thank you very much. Dan Kelly, last word.
Well, Rocco, thanks for supporting this show and putting it on every week. I know it takes quite a bit of your time to put it all together. Thanks, Zeb, for being his helper and being around. We need you, and keep knocking those caravans, man. That's the highlight of my morning. If it ain't you, it's EB. As for helping one another, we have Telegram that's always active and running during the day. I'm usually got it opened and looking for something or somebody that needs a hand with something. But I'm very cautious not to say something to give out the wrong advice. If I'm not sure about it, I don't do it. Other than that, everybody have a great week.
Jason, last word, brother.
I just want to say thank you for putting on the show. I've learned quite a bit going back through and watching all the older shows, and because I've only been playing around with Linux for about a month and a half, and it was definitely helpful in the Telegram channels. I'm part of the BDL and the Destination Linux ones, and yeah, like you said, the community's great in those places. I've learned a lot asking questions, and just going through forums and discourse and all that kind of stuff. It's put all the information you can into like the discourse, because it is definitely where I've been going a lot to learn more about Linux.
Yep. Very nice. Dan Simmons.
Thank you, Rocco, as always. And it's great to be here. Great to have a voice this week so that, you guys can hear me. So that was good. Yeah, look forward to the week.
Glad to have you back, Dan.
Thanks.
Barb, last word.
First, of course, I want to thank you, Rocco and Zeb and Dan and all the people who put this together. And I really love my virtual lug. So thank you, everybody.
Dave, last word.
Thank you, Rocco and crew. Thank you, Yuri and Philip, for bringing the information about that new system and process and organizational pattern for a distro. And I look forward to trying it soon. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you next week.
Yuri, you have a last word, brother?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on the show and letting me talk about metrics, and thanks to Phil for his support with Manjaro, and hopefully you try the ISOs and give us some good feedback.
All right. Well, you're welcome any week or any time that you have time. But like I said, we will put Nitrix on the list for the distro challenges.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Philip, last word?
I was working, so I didn't keep attention. Well, it was always fun to be here and talk about the new stuff we're doing here in Manjaro, and also doing a new collab with Nitrix, and hope to have some new features soon. And when you guys start to do the challenge with the distro, maybe then it's polished and makes fun to do it.
Very nice. Well, anytime you're up at 2:30 in the morning and you have nothing to do and you want to join us on a Saturday night, feel free.
It's 4 now, so it's fine.
Okay.
Almost morning.
Europe edition next week. Vash, last word.
Thanks for the stream, and we will see you next week.
Wendy, welcome back, Wendy.
Hey, it's great to see everybody this week. Glad I got to pop in for a little bit and say hi and add my 2 cents here and there.
Very nice. Good to see you, Wendy.
Thanks.
Steve, last word.
As always, it's great to have all this support to everybody that's out in the chat room, to those that are here. Thanks, Dave, for your drive-by thumbs up. Appreciate everything everybody does, and thank you, Rocco.
Yep,
and been awesome.
Eric,
hey, glad I was able to make it. 4th time was a charm.
It's about time.
I just switched to my laptop. It must be that AMD Ryzen. I don't
That's
know.
what it must be.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Sooner the better. Anyway, great to be here. This is, I was afraid I was going to miss it. I was a little stressed out at the beginning, so I'm calm now. Everything's good. Happy New Year to everyone. Safe, prosperous New Year. Thanks for Philip and Yuri being on, representing the distros. And I will see you probably twice next week.
Yep. Thomas, last word.
Well, thanks for having me on. Sorry, my internet keeps cutting out and all that. I have a certain other person on my network sucking up all the Wi-Fi waves.
Oops.
Yeah.
You can unplug that one, right?
Yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to be on here, and I kind of enjoy it. So.
Okay, all right, never mind.
Internet should be better next week, though, because I'll be back at college and have that gigabit goodness.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Dig it. Alan?
Well, thank you for having me on today, even though I had a bunch of problems. A little warning about Debian SID if anyone's running it. Uninstall LibreOffice before you update, or it's going to crash the whole system. I was spending 5 hours breaking that, so I figured I'd let that go, or let that you guys know about that. I have reported that to Debian. But other than that, have a good week.
All right. That is going to wrap it up for this week. Our distro challenge was Fedora 31. It will continue this week as Fedora 31 until next week. Hopefully we will have somebody from Fedora join us to talk about it next week. And this past week was the Linux Spotlight with Brent, and that was fantastic. And for Wednesday at 6 a.m., I have some guy from the Manjaro project called Philip Mueller on, and his episode will air on Wednesday at 6 a.m. So check that
Nice.
out. Thank you to both Yuri and Philip for being here tonight and talking to us about Nitrix and about Manjaro's involvement. And other than that, we will see you next week for 2 episodes. Biddle Europe starting at 3 p.m. Eastern and Biddle regular edition at 8 p.m. Eastern. But until then, long live Linux.
Bye-bye.
Long live Linux.
Take care, everybody.